Well, I reacted to Knowles, and a lot of people seem to watch that, so I guess now I gotta react to Klavan. So here it is. I told y'all, though, that this was not an easy interview to get through. You're gonna see why, so let's get into it.
So when you say, let's start with the men and women, when you say that men are better at everything, it certainly seems that men are better at all the things that men do, but they're not better at mothering, are they? They don't have babies as well as women do.
Well, that's the only thing they can't do is have a child. But like, if you look at single father homes, they fare very similar to single mother homes.
Well, yeah.
Or sorry, better than single mother homes.
Uh-huh.
So I was trying to think of anything that women were better at. And when I tried to look up data, I just couldn't find anything. So like, if you look at kids because I was like, okay, we're the nurturing ones, right? But then we're more likely to kill infants and the elderly.
We're more likely to kill infants than women are more likely to kill infants than elderly people are likely to kill infants?
No, we're more likely to kill infants and the elderly.
Oh, and the elderly, I see. But that's kind of an unfair stat, because it's like women take care of the elderly and infants more, and who wouldn't want to kill them? I mean,
Yeah, unpopular opinion. I kind of agree with Pearl, and I mean, the only reason I agree with Pearl is because I used to be blue-pilled like Klavan and like Pearl used to be, but I mean, the reason I agree with Pearl is because I basically went on that journey with her. I watched her as she discovered all this evidence, and like the irony of it is like the evidence that changed her mind is the evidence that changed my mind, and like I basically completely agree with her on that.
Incredibly annoying.
Yeah, but you could look at abuse too, because that was another thing. I noticed on my show, like I interviewed over 1,000 women on dating and relationships. And I thought it was crazy how many women told me they were abused. And then I would ask a couple questions, and generally it was kind of nonsense, most of it. So like they never filed a police report. They would always, like one girl I had on told me that she was pushed down a flight of stairs, for example, but she kind of forgot the part where she was trespassing, where he told her to get out. So he was trying to get her out of the house, stuff like that. But if you look at abuse stats, when you look at one-sided abuse, it's 70% women.
That women do a lot of the abusing, you mean?
Well, most abuse is mutual, meaning they're both like hitting each other.
Yes.
But if you look at one-sided abuse, women are more likely to.
Yeah, unless you're somebody who's my age, I'm sorry, but you just do not understand how much the women these days lie about abuse and cheating and all this other stuff. It's just lie after lie after lie after lie, and it never ends. And even when you catch them red-handed in a lie, they just, as habitual liars do, they just lie more. And it gets really frustrating and tiring dealing with those types of people, because they just cannot stop lying. Not just lying about that stuff too, and lying about sexual assault and sexual harassment. There's so many women who I met that like I thought we were hitting it off, like we were flirting, like she was responding to everything that I was doing in what seemed to be a good way. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just rip the rug out from underneath you and go talk to your boss or somebody else and go and accuse you of sexual harassment, even though they never once told you no. They never once told you stop. They never said, don't do this. They never said, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. None of that. Every single interaction with that girl was completely mutual, and with all those girls. But it seems like a lot of these women are out here to just try and use whatever angle they can to step on people to try and get ahead, when they don't realize they're burning their bridges in the long run.
All right, so I don't want to argue. You think that men are better at everything. So what is your conclusion from that?
That they're better at everything.
No, but then you said that men shouldn't get married. Marriage is a bad deal. This is the thing that actually kind of attracted me to what you were saying in the first place. I've said that ever since feminism, that if you marry anybody, even feminist adjacent, you're probably going to get a bad deal, because men give up something very dear to them when they marry. They give up their sexual freedom, which for men is very important. And so they give up something. What do they get? Now, I got a home, I got a mother of my children, I got wonderful children, I got companionship, I got love. many wonderful things that I got in getting married, but I'm not sure that as many guys are getting that today. But you seem to be saying that even if you get that, you're kind of getting a bad deal.
What percent of women do you think are marriageable under the age of 35?
Oh, God.
Debt-free.
Yeah.
Debt-free.
Yeah.
No tattoos. No sex work. In shape.
Uh-huh. And
what percent?
Do you think it's smaller? Well, you tell me.
No, these numbers were confirmed by an actuary.
Uh-huh.
In a world, it's called A World Without Men.
Right.
5%.
5% you think are marriageable?
This is the part of the debate where Andrew and Pearl begin to start speaking past each other, and everything past this point in the debate just continues further upon them speaking past each other entirely, basically. Not only that, it's also funny, like, when you tell older people, like, the number of women who are actually, like, possible wife material in this generation, like, they just seem to dismiss it as, like, no way, I don't believe you. And it's like, dude, we wouldn't be in this situation if it was any different. Like, you realize that, right? Like, and I'd be willing to bet it's a lot less than 5% too, because, like, if you don't want a wife who's fat, you don't want a wife who's had an abortion or any drug addictions or any tattoos, and on top of that, you also want a wife who is not a whore, i.e. has not slept with more than 5 men, like, you're really slimming down the population by quite a bit by just having just those standards. And I mean, in my opinion, like, that's not even good enough, because once a woman has slept with 5 men, then there's an 80% chance that she's going to divorce you. And don't just think just because you picked a virgin means you got like a golden ticket. No, like, there's still a 20% chance she'll divorce you by the time you're 60. But yeah, it's just unbelievable how, nobody wants to believe that the women have just turned themselves into sluts and men. Like, the women out here these days act like men, and like most men aren't interested in it, because it's like, we're not gay. If I was gay, I would go fuck a dude. I want a woman, not a woman who acts like a man. Part of this has to do with just the fact of how old Klavan is, like, look at him. He's a fossil compared to the kids these days. I'm sure if you took Klavan into a modern day high school, the kids would call him grandpa. And while yes, grandpa does have some wisdom, I wouldn't go to grandpa to find out what's popular with the kids these days and what's actually going on with the kids these days, because grandpa probably doesn't know.
But the idea of marriage not being...
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the idea of marriage not being a good thing for men. This is something we get hit on at the Daily Wire all the time, because all of the main male talent at the Daily Wire are not just married, but devotedly and happily married. And so we get people yell at us and say, well, you're disconnected from the culture. And my thought about that is, well, shouldn't you be more like us, and instead of us becoming more unhappy in our marriages? If men are not supposed to get married, what is a man's life supposed to look like?
I don't say they should or they shouldn't.
Okay.
I think every guy has to decide for himself.
Okay.
You guys' options are going to be different than a different guy's options. I'm not here to tell men what to do. But I think using a blanket statement, telling men to get married young without fully understanding women today and the laws, is not the wisest.
Right. Well, people who marry...
Because in a business deal, you would never sign a contract in business that the other party is paid to leave. It would not be wise, right? If me and you were to do a business deal together, and if I break the deal, I get your children, half of your stuff, and I can ruin your reputation, you would never do it.
Well, I mean... And
it's not uncommon.
But
30% of divorces are malicious.
So people who are married are happier, healthier, they have more sex, they live longer. So about 1% of business startups succeed. Mm-hmm. So it's a high risk, right? To start business, you pour money into it, you put all your soul in it, you put all that work, maybe your time, maybe you get older, and then it fails. It's 99% of the time it's going to fail. So it's a high risk business.
And here we go. we finally start with well, what should it be, Pearl? And oh my goodness, the Daily Wire just cannot give up the what should it be question or the what should it be argument, because it's like they just can't get it through their skulls that Pearl is not here to tell people what they should do or what the world should be or how great things would be if things were the way they should be. No, Pearl is here to say, these are the facts, this is what's happening, and this is what I've seen. And everyone that Pearl's talked to at the Daily Wire so far cannot get out of the perspective of idealism, as in, how should the world be? What we think is good for the world is the way the world should be. And I think what a lot of them don't realize is that, like, to guys who don't have it all figured out, it just sounds kind of preachy, to like especially to us who, like, us guys who agree with the Daily Wire on how the world should be and how marriage should be. But the problem is they don't accept or acknowledge that it's not the same way that it was yesterday. The world has changed and they have not kept up with it. They are still on the, well, it should be this way because that's the way it was for millennia. And while yes, we agree that's the way it should be, that's not what it is. So we can't continue acting as it is, as if it is the way that it should be when it is not. That's called delusion. And in the business analogy that both Pearl and Klavan made to their points, you can really start to see where the divide in this conversation is going, in the sense of, like, when Pearl brings in the business analogy, it's very accurate and concise and actually makes a lot of sense, because nobody would enter a business contract where the other person, it's paid to leave the business contract. Like, if the other person breaks the contract, they get paid. Why would you sign that contract? You're basically guaranteeing that the other person is at some point going to break the contract. And in Klavan's business analogy, he's trying to equate it more to, like, getting married is like starting a business. And while yes, it can be, because if you have a wife who is willing to participate in the relationship as much as you are, who's basically going to be your relationship business partner, essentially, then yeah, it can be like starting a business where you're working together to create something greater than yourselves. But the reality is women don't want to do that now. Women, as soon as the relationship requires some work or there's something that needs to be fixed in the relationship, if the man cannot or will not fix it, you know what the woman does? She breaks up with you. She cheats on you. She falsely accuses you of doing something you didn't do so that she can run away and claim that, well, he was actually the bad guy. He did something wrong and mean and evil. And not only that, the reason Andrew Klavan's business analogy does not make much sense and is not a very good analogy for what the point he's trying to make is because, while yes, starting a business can be a high risk, high reward, it's nowhere near as high risk as a marriage, because in business you have what's called an LLC, a limited liability company. What that basically means is if your business goes bankrupt and somebody sues your business, the person who sues your business cannot legally come after your personal assets. So it leaves everything you own personally that is not owned by the business out of it. But that's the problem with marriage. When you marry somebody, you are basically merging your assets with their assets. So when you divorce, you are literally losing half of your personal assets, which is nothing like a business. It's a much higher risk than a business, because at least with a business, you're not going to lose your house. You're not going to lose your car. You're not going to lose any of your personal belongings or your children. You very well could lose all of those things in a marriage.
What does a man get out of marriage that he doesn't get out of a live-in girlfriend?
Well, that's kind of a strange question, because if she's a live-in girlfriend, then...
Which is not uncommon nowadays.
But a live-in girlfriend is effectively acting the wife. And can do, in this country anyway, after a while, can divorce you the same as a wife can. So there's no advantage to it. So I mean, that's a weird...
Right. So Well, it's not an unfair question. Why does he have to get the state involved?
Well, it's not, for many of us, it's not the state, it's the church. I mean, it's a religious act. And it also, I mean, look, I got married. When I got married, I had lived with my wife for 2 years. I saw absolutely no reason to get married except, you know, we wanted to have kids and we wanted to be a family with one name. And so we got married. And the minute I got married, I knew everything had changed because people are ritual oriented. Ritual means something. And so the marriage did change everything. It changed it on the instant. I mean, I knew the second I did it. I knew, the second I did it, I'd done the smartest thing I'd ever done.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about your marriage, though. And I think sometimes you guys take it kind of personal, where
No.
it's like, well, not. But I'm saying, because you guys always refer to your marriages. But we're not talking about you guys.
Well, what
I'm talking about marriage as an institution. The average marriage is 8 years.
But what I'm saying,
70% are filed by women. Only 5% of women are marriageable under the age of 35. 90% of child support and alimony goes to women from men. 30% of divorces are malicious. It's not about you guys, but overall the institution. How can you look at those numbers and not see that it's broken? Something's wrong.
Well, again, it's high risk, high reward.
You know, I think that's really the biggest issue here is the state. And like, why is the state involved in marriage? I don't understand why that's necessary for the government to have their finger in that pie. I understand that the way that we do it here is that married people get tax breaks, but I don't even think like if stopping giving married people tax breaks is what gets the government out of marriage, I'm all for it because the government doesn't need to be involved in marriage. The reason marriage is in such a bad state as it currently is because the government has been involved in it for so long. Everything the government touches breaks, and then the government says, well, you need to give me more power to fix it. And that's what feminism is for. Feminism is for those angry, screaming women to scream about the problem that the government created so that the government can point to them and say, well, we got to fix this. We need more power so we can fix this. And the cycle continues until society collapses.
Let me put it to you this way. What do you think a man's life should look like? Because, for instance, I think if I said, what should a man's life look like? It would include marriage and family and children. I think that would be the best thing. Now, you want to say, here's a guy who shouldn't be like that, or here's a society that's falling apart and makes it difficult. Those are two different things. But what do you think a man's life should look like?
I think every man has to decide that for himself.
Right.
Like Jesus wasn't married.
Okay, well, exempt the
No,
son.
I'm
If we can
saying there's
exempt, if we can exempt the Son of God for a minute.
But there's
you know.
examples of great men in history that didn't get married.
Yeah, but there's examples
So-
of great
so I
men in
think
history who were
every-
miserable too. I mean, that's not a good argument.
I know, but that's my point. I don't think marriage is for every man, and there's not enough wives to go around.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so what are men supposed to do in the meantime?
It's an interesting thing to say. I'm just trying to get at the thing that you're saying because I'm a little confused about it. To be honest with you, like the idea that the culture is so broken that men shouldn't get married. No, I don't say should or shouldn't. Okay, you're saying it's a bad deal.
I say it's objectively a bad deal for men.
Right, by the numbers.
Because of the way the court system is structured.
That's the reason. It's not because women, of the nature of women themselves. It's that. I mean, is that what you're saying?
That's what I said.
Yeah. No. Is what you're saying that the system, the court systems are so bad that.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, I don't.
But wait. Just a minute. I just want to make sure I understand. But you're not saying that you shouldn't get married because women are a pain in the neck or whatever.
No, I'm saying every man has to decide for himself.
Right.
But there are not enough wives to go around. I mean, objectively, there are not enough wives to go around in 2024.
And again, Klavan cannot get through his own perspective or his delusion and see that, yes, it's high risk, high reward, but there is a much more statistical higher probability of you getting absolutely wrecked and ruined than there is of a statistical probability of you getting said high reward. Like, Pearl just listed a literal laundry list of statistical facts that prove that many more risks involved than there are rewards involved. And it's interesting how Klavan likes to just dodge all of those statements and continue to push his non sequitur business analogy that doesn't actually make any sense. And foreshadowing, you're going to see what I just said come back later through Klavan's mouth.
If someone came to you and said, Pearl, I really understand what you're saying about the court system, and I really understand what you're saying about women, but I really want to get married. That seems to me the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to have children. The meaning of life is to build a family. The meaning of life is to have a home. What advice would you give? I'm
not really in the business of giving advice, but I would say get a prenup, consult your attorney in your state. You have to be careful. I mean, it might be funny to you, but I've seen men on the brink of suicide after this stuff.
Sure.
I've seen men marry, I interviewed one guy who married a traditional Eastern European girl. And, he lost his job. He lost his house. He lost his children. He hadn't seen them in 2 years, even though they were a mile from him. Andrew, these are real things that happen every single day. Men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide after a divorce.
Right.
Men have to be careful. They have to protect themselves.
But I think, listen, all of this stuff I get and I hear that, but I think you're dodging something here. I really do. I think every study I've ever seen shows that a happy marriage makes men happier and makes people happier. Wait. And my experience is that the people I know who are happily married are the happiest people I know. So high risk, high reward. And you kind of dodge the fact that it's high reward. I mean,
yeah, in this clip, you can literally see Klavan multiple times practically putting words in Pearl's mouth because he cannot get himself out of his perspective of how the world should be and realize that how it should be and how it is are two different things. And that to describe or acknowledge how the world is, you do not also have to say how it should be, which is, I think, where the Daily Wire has this disconnect, is in they just cannot comprehend that people would just make factual statements and then not follow them up with, well, it should be better this way. Sometimes people just report on the facts, guys. That's it. It's really that simple. You'll also start to notice that in the last clip that I played, Klavan starts equating Pearl stating statistical facts as Pearl saying that men should or shouldn't do something, which is also what Knowles did and what is going to continue to get worse throughout this interview. And in a second, Klavan's going to let the cat out of the bag and basically confirm that the way that he sees the world is that if you're stating a possible negative of marriage, then that needs to be ignored in favor for the positives of marriage. When all Pearl is saying is, hey, look, there's a negative. And it's also surprising how Klavan can basically agree with all of the statements on, yeah, there aren't enough wives to go around, but he continues acting as if men should get married anyways. And even though he just acknowledged that there aren't enough wives for men to get married to. So it's well, what do you expect us to do, bro? It's like he's contradicting himself and he can't quite understand that he is.
I guess what I'm saying to you is when you give this general piece of advice.
It's not advice.
Well, when you give this, it is. It's saying that this is a bad deal, that you should go into it feeling it's a bad deal. It's a form of advice.
Well, it's a bad deal because women are paid to leave.
Right. So
that's why it's a bad deal.
Right. So.
And we have a culture that doesn't shame women for leaving either.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is what interests me about what you're saying.
Because of that, men have to be very, very careful.
Right, they have to be careful. But then when I ask you how they should be careful, besides legal things, all you have to say are just get a prenup and all that. You don't know. Is there a sort of woman that you would look for if you were a man?
Childless. I would say don't date women with children.
No, that's good advice. Yeah.
No debt, no tattoos. Personally, I like my brothers to go for more athletic women because we grow them tall in my family. But I'm not really in the business of giving men advice. I think every man has to decide for himself. Right. There's a million other content creators in the manosphere you can talk to that have literal courses on this stuff of how to vet women. I'm specifically talking about how the laws are not favorable to men.
Well, I think
I
you.
just think objectively, like, you can't say that's a good deal when women are paid to leave.
It depends. It depends, because before the laws went bad, they favored men in ways that were tremendously unfair. And I could match every story. I could match every story that you tell about bad men with stories of women that happened back in the day where they lost everything, and things have overcorrected.
There's writings from the 1800s of men complaining about divorce court then.
Yeah, but
this isn't like this isn't a new phenomenon. Like, there's writings from the 1800s talking about how the man is paying money to his opera, like his wife who's an opera singer and makes more than him. Because naturally, I just think we have a society that naturally wants to protect women.
See? That right there, Klavan said he thinks Pearl's dodging something when that's actually what psychologists call projection, because as you can see earlier, you can rewind the video, I proved that Klavan was the one who was dodging a lot of the facts and statistics that Pearl was stating so that he could continue to beat his marriage drum over and over again. Because even though in one sentence, the Daily Wire guys will acknowledge that, yes, all of these problems exist and all these negatives exist that could kill you and ruin your life in marriage, but they continue to beat the marriage drum as if those risks don't exist. And like literally, in the next sentence after they acknowledge the risk, they continue to beat that marriage drum. And you're just like, did you not just hear what you just said? Like, don't you think men should like take precautions and be careful and understand what they're getting themselves involved into before they get involved in it? No, marry, 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 marry. The reasoning always comes back to themselves. It's always, well, me and my friend group and my social group and the people I've interacted with, they all are happy or married. They all have great marriages and stable families and everything. And it's like, yeah, like, you guys aren't a good model for the average man and woman in society. You guys are probably top 10%, if not higher.
And I'm still a little lost. I'm still a little lost in how you can say that you're not effectively coaching men to turn away from a high risk, high reward situation, which is what men do. High risk, high reward is what men do. I mean,
not really. Otherwise, they'd be signing up for marriage, according to you.
Now, you'll notice at the beginning of the last clip that I just showed, Klavan literally states that stating facts that are negatives of marriage, in his opinion, is giving advice. And even when Pearl corrects him, saying that, no, I'm not giving advice, I'm just stating some facts here, Klavan still continues on his role of like, well, I think that's a form of advice. And while, yes, it can be a form of advice, it's nowhere near the same as Pearl actually saying men shouldn't get married or marriage is a bad deal, like he's implying. Because Pearl's not saying any of those things. She never said any of those things. She's literally just stating facts of like, well, this is what could happen if you get married. That's it. That's it. That's not advice. That's just a statistical fact. And stating facts is not giving advice. That's just stating facts. And again, I keep repeating myself, but this is what I see happening is Klavan is stuck in his perspective, in his own social bubble. He cannot see outside of it. You know, part of it just has to do with how old he is. So, you know, it's not really his fault. He's getting to that age where he's just not with it with what the kids are doing.
The guys at the Daily Wire tell men, they don't tell men just to get married. They tell men to look for women who are marriageable.
Well, when you poll Gen Z, family is on their 7th ranking of priorities.
Yeah.
So if the women don't want to do it, what are the men supposed to do?
Well, how do you think that's going to work out for Gen Z?
How do I think it's going to work out?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think a society that's without marriage will look like?
Well, I think it's going to be a single society. So I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm saying this is what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm describing what's happening. I'm not giving prescriptions.
Yeah, that kind of strikes me as a dodge, though, because I mean, I want to.
How am I dodging?
Well, because you started out kind of saying men do everything better than women, and
I do think that. I think.
Yes, yeah. but I mean that's just not true in my experience. I mean, which is
name one thing.
What's that? They make homes and they raise children and they mother children better than men do.
Well, then why don't single mother homes fare better than single father homes?
Did everyone catch that Freudian slip right there? When he said that Pearl is not essentially coaching women, and then he corrected himself right after that and said men. And the reason in psychology that happens is because in his subconscious he understands that Pearl isn't saying that, even though consciously he won't let that thought into his conscience. So because he's trying to make his point, and his conscious and his subconscious mind are in conflict with each other, hence the reason for the Freudian slip. And I think Pearl's response to it is just gold, because it's like, well, yeah, if what you're saying is true, then guys would just do it, right? Like, but they're not. So why don't we try and poke around and find out why they're not, rather than just say, well, guys should be doing it, so guys should be doing it.
So I think we're talking. I just feel like you're talking about two things at once, and then every time I ask you about one thing, you dodge over to another. That's what I'm.
What am I dodging?
Well, is if you think that men can just do anything women do, and women are therefore unnecessary, and therefore the marriage, except
I didn't say unnecessary. That's not what I said.
Except for the physical production of children.
No, I said that men are better than at everything. If I say that adults are better at everything than children, does that mean children are unnecessary?
No, but I would say that adults aren't better at being children.
Pearl says, and I quote, "I'm not giving prescriptions." And Klavan says, and I quote, "That strikes me as a dodge." How? Why does somebody have to give a prescription to a problem for you to recognize that that's a valid problem? Like, how does he not recognize that the problems that we're talking about here are so complicated, no one person has the answer to it. No one person can fix an entire society worth of problems. It's not possible. You can't do it. There's no point in trying, because you're going to be wrong sometimes. This is why the Red Pill movement is getting so popular, because people are saying, hey, guys, we need to get more people aware of this. We need more people talking about this, because the more people who understand the problem, who are trying to think of solutions, the more likely we are to find a solution to the problem. Because if we continue to just ignore the problem, it's not going to go away by itself. It's just going to fester and get worse. The only way that we can solve a problem that is so complex that it's literally tearing society apart is by getting the society to come together and to find a solution. I don't understand how it's that complicated. I also don't understand why the Daily Wire, they can't acknowledge a problem without also acknowledging a solution with the problem, when sometimes you shouldn't be doing that, because sometimes you don't have the solution to the problem. Sometimes you're facing a new problem that nobody understands and nobody has the correct answer to, and we're all just figuring it out. Which is why I think Pearl doesn't like to give solutions, because the honest truth is none of us have solutions. Nobody has the right answer here, because if we did, then the problem wouldn't exist anymore.
I do love my mom. My parents are still married. They've been together 30 years.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why we're, going personal, but,
Well, because this is a personal question. I think that when you bring out stats that tell people not to do something that's dangerous, but obviously...
No, I don't say not to do it. I don't say not to do it.
When you
warn, be careful.
When you warn people against it.
Do you not think they should be careful?
Yes, Klavan, both you and Pearl are each talking about different things at the same time and speaking right past each other. And the reason you guys can't really come to an agreement is not because Pearl is dodging, it's because you're dodging. And you refuse to look at the problem from outside of your own perspective. And the final comment is quite a non sequitur, Klavan. I expect better from you, Klavan. Come on.
Of course.
You don't think men...
Do you not think
Okay.
that people have always thought that they should be careful about marriage? Isn't that something that...
I think I think ever since I think ever since they switched a couple things in family court, they have to be more careful now.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's what the part I agree with. I still...
Okay, so
But I still
then
think
we
you're...
agree.
Well, I think you're dancing around something, though. I'm not frustrated by what you're saying. I'm frustrated by the fact that you're not owning up to certain things that you actually do say. I mean, when you say to someone to be wary, I mean, I've watched your videos. At no point in your video do you say, this is a high reward, a marriage is a high reward thing. And every happily married man I know, puts his marriage at the center of his world. I mean,
Right there, guys. Did you see that? Did you catch that? Right there, Andrew Klavan just said that if you speak about stats that are negative of marriage, he thinks that it is telling people not to do it. When you're not telling people anything, you're just stating a fact.
I guess the point I'm saying is, as a woman speaking to men, saying you should not, saying it, warning them or frightening them over a high risk, high reward thing, you're asking them to act like women.
I wouldn't say that I frighten them. I would say I interview men that have been disproportionately affected by divorce.
Yeah.
I interview men that have lost everything. And this is why I say it is very serious, because I have seen men on the brink of suicide. There is like a death in a guy's eyes, and I can't even describe it. Like when you meet someone that has had his entire reputation ruined, everybody thinks he's an abuser. It stresses him out so bad that he loses his job. He's paying child support, alimony. His kids are a mile from them.
But statistically, divorced women are poorer than divorced men. Statistically, women lose more in divorce than men do.
Well, men are more likely to commit suicide after divorce. 30% of divorce. No, this isn't funny.
Men succeed at suicide. They're better at suicide.
So Andrew believes that it's not owning up to what she says if she doesn't acknowledge that there are also positives to marriage. Like, I'm confused by this point, Klavan. It doesn't really make much sense, because it's like he's trying to say that because she doesn't talk about the positives of marriage, that means that she's not owning up to the truth about marriage, when, like, that's not at all really what's happening. When you really look at it, Pearl is just like the polar opposite of the Daily Wire. The Daily Wire does nothing but preach about the goods of marriage, and Pearl pretty much does nothing but tell everybody the statistics that nobody wants to hear about in marriage, because they're not very nice and pleasant. While they essentially are just two different sides of the same coin, I don't think you have to talk about both sides of the coin so that what you say about the one side of the coin is valid, because if what you're saying is true and is a fact, then it shouldn't matter that you don't say any of the other things or other facts that are the opposite of the fact that you stated.
Like, I think you're downplaying how serious this stuff
No, but
is.
if women get poorer than men after a divorce, doesn't that seem to mean that women are not being paid to get divorced?
How do they calculate that?
By the outcome of the people's lives after the divorce.
Oh, no, but I'm asking, how do they calculate
by
that?
The income?
Because they don't typically, in a lot of those stats, they don't include alimony, child support, and the money that women are taking from men. They just look at their income.
No, I think the ones I've seen, they include that in the income.
Did you guys hear what I hear? Because what I heard was that he was basically just said that telling men the statistical realities of marriage is, quote unquote, frightening men away from marriage. I'm sorry, Andrew, but if looking at the statistical facts, the things that we can prove that are facts, is frightening men away from marriage, then maybe it's time for you to finally admit that what marriage has become is frightening men away from marriage. Not any of the other things that you think that it is. maybe the actual problem here is what marriage has become. And what we're talking about is the legal institution of marriage. The fact that you can marry someone, she can divorce you for any reason at any time, whenever she feels like it, accuse you of abuse, accuse you of assault, take half your money, take your house, probably lose your job because you're so stressed out and homeless. Like, come on, dude. And his justification for it all is, well, women are usually poorer after divorce than men. And, well, yeah, because usually the women are the ones mooching off the guys. That's why they get alimony and child support, is so that they don't have to go get a job. They can just continue to mooch off their ex-husband. And then you think because you're pointing at the statistic that women are poorer after divorce means they fare worse? I don't believe you. Like Pearl said, more men commit suicide. Not only that, his utter laughter at men's suicide, it just feels like he's laughing at us and at our pain. And he's just like, ha ha ha, who cares about you? You're not important. But if the shoe was on the other foot, if he was the one in that situation, I'm sure he wouldn't be saying those things.
I mean, divorce is a horrible thing. For most of us, it's against our religion.
Well, if there was 100 marriages, 13 would be in a malicious divorce, and that's malicious. That doesn't mean he fared badly. 13 would basically be that he is getting alienated from his children. He's paying a substantial amount of child support, alimony, etc. And so again, this is serious stuff.
No, I agree with about 50% of what you're saying, and I think that I wish that. Well, listen. Why don't I put it this way? I'm out of time, so let me put it this way. Come back and let's talk about the nature of men and women, because I feel that when you make videos, you talk about those things, and when you're challenged, you kind of vanish. you kind of dodge me a little bit.
And he's going to continue to stand on the statistic that women are poorer after divorce than men as some kind of excuse as to how women have it worse than men after divorce. I don't believe you. This is why men aren't getting married, because yeah, the women might have it worse, but after the divorce, but the men have it worse during the divorce. So, I mean, not only that, most of the men who kill themselves from divorce kill themselves after the divorce, because it's when you really have time to sit there and think about it and think what you could have done differently. Yeah, I don't think that's a correct assessment, Klavan, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. I think it's you who's dodging and who's vanishing, but whatever, everyone's got their own opinion.
Which I don't see why you should. I don't see why you should, because I actually think a lot of what you're saying is true. I mean, a lot of the dangers of marriage are true, and I think even all the people here at the Daily Wire believe that. We believe it's a high risk thing. But we also believe that it's so high reward that men who are men should take high risks for high rewards.
Yeah, but I also think you guys attribute everything to women a lot. And I think that successful men would be successful with or without women.
Well, that's unprovable. But the men don't think so. No man thinks that. No happily married man thinks that.
No, you don't. But you don't speak for all men.
But no happily married man thinks that. It just doesn't happen.
Right, but that discounts the. I mean, look at what happened to Crowder. I mean, he did everything you guys said. And I'm not. I know it's kind of awkward because you guys had the beef with them or whatever. So I'm not even trying to do that. But I'm just using him as an example. He did everything on paper right.
Yeah, I think he's a bad example. I think he's a bad example, Pearl.
and everybody labeled him an abuser, even though his court documents said he wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I read them. I read like 100 pages of his court documents.
Yeah, I think
that's someone who did the trad con.
I think you're making a mistake on this one. If that is the way you're judging marriages, I think you're not judging them as clearly as you should.
Well,
I mean,
how
Stephen's been a friend for a long time, but I'm not sure that the way you're depicting that marriage is correct.
Quite audacious of him to think that he gets to speak for all men. Sorry, bud, you're one man. You get to speak for yourself and maybe your friend group or your group of people that agree with you, but you don't get to speak for all of us. That's not how this works. Also interesting how Pearl can literally state what his court documented records, and Klavan will still continue to deny that that is the truth when it's like, but the court confirmed it in court documents. Like it's true, whether you want it to be or not, whether you perceive it to be or not, whether you think it is or not. Those are the facts as far as we know them. And you can wish them away all you want, but it's not going to change a thing.
When you say a woman, when you say a woman sometimes starts the abuse in a marriage, that's true. But when a woman hits a man and when a man hits a woman, it's two entirely different events. Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, what does hitting have to do with that?
When you talk about, when you said before, well, women commit abuse in marriages.
Well, lesbian relationships are the most abusive.
Yeah, I have too. And yet when a woman abuses a man, it's a lot different than when a man abuses a woman. I mean, men commit 95% of all murders. 95%. So we have our flaws.
Well, I mean, one out of, if you believe abortion's murder, 1 out of 3 women have done that.
Yeah, well, I believe abortion's
that's
homicide.
Way higher. I mean, the greatest genocide was when they legalized abortion.
Yeah, well,
you think that's murder, right?
No, I think that's homicide, but I do understand what you're saying. All right, I have to stop. I'm out of time, but I'll invite you back and continue this conversation.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that people shouldn't hit people. I don't care if you're a man, woman, child, alien, whatever. Doesn't fucking matter to me. I've been hit by too many women to just say, oh, men shouldn't hit women. Like, no, women need to stop hitting men. Like, there's too many women out here that think that they can just lay hands on men with absolutely zero consequences. No. That's why I go with the baseball rules. 3 strikes and you're out. Number 1, I'm going to ask you to stop. Number 2, I'm going to tell you to stop. And on number 3, I'm going to retaliate. So if you made it to the point where I retaliated, you made 3 mistakes. So the way I see it, you're 3 times as guilty as me for hitting. So you can't put the blame on me. Oh, you hit a woman. Yeah, she hit me first 3 times. And what was I supposed to do? Just continue to let her hit me? Like, no, I'm a man. I have self-respect. I'm not going to tolerate such childish behavior. Like, if she wants to play stupid games, then she can win stupid prizes and figure out why you shouldn't hit people. Because people will hit back and they'll hit you back harder. Yeah, that's my reaction for that very annoying interview. It was like mental nails on the chalkboard, like trying to follow where each of them was going at the same time when they're both going in like completely opposite directions about completely different topics practically. Very confusing, but yeah, I hope I broke it down in a way where everyone can understand it as well as I did. So if you made it to this point in the video, go ahead, drop a like, go ahead, drop a subscribe, and YouTube shadow ban me, so help me hack that algorithm and leave a comment too.